Okay, so in this video, I'm going to speak about the PRISMA checklist for systematic literature reviews and meta-analysis, and talk about what medical writers what they need to know. So let's start with some definitions. Um, PRISMA stands for Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. And this checklist is a crucial tool for writers involved in preparing or editing systematic reviews, SLRs, or meta-analysis. Um, so with respect to SLRs, what are these? So, well, remember that a literature review remember there are literature reviews that use explicit systematic methods to collect and synthesize findings of studies that address a clearly formulated question. So these SLRs use a statistical technique to synthesize results when study effect estimates and their variances are available, and these yield a quantitative summary of results. So, systematic reviews and meta-analysis, they really do play a vital role in healthcare by informing clinical guidelines, supporting funding decisions, and helping clinicians stay current with their relevant literature. However, the value of both studies depends heavily on clear and complete reporting, which often varies and can hinder results evaluation. So, to ensure a systematic review is valuable to users, authors should prepare a transparent, complete, and accurate account of why the review was done, what they did, such as how studies were identified and selected, and what they found, such as the characteristics of the contributing studies and the results of meta analysis. So, next, let's talk a little bit about the development of the PRISMA checklist. So, in the 80s and 90s, a couple of studies assessed the quality of review reporting and they found some serious shortcomings. Um, these studies found that many reviews, in fact, failed to meet key reporting criteria. So, despite some efforts over time, little improvement was observed in the adequacy of reporting across systematic reviews and meta analysis. Then in 1999, to address the suboptimal reporting of meta analysis, an international group developed a guidance called the QUOROM statement. This is the quality of reporting of meta analysis. And this focused on the reporting of these studies with respect to investigations on randomized clinical trials. Um, links for all these studies are in the video description. So 10 years later, in 2009, the guideline was updated to address several conceptual and practical advances in the science of systematic reviews and was renamed PRISMA. As we said before, this is Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. The original 2009 PRISMA statement was published in multiple journals, including the British Medical Journal and PLOS Biology, and was accompanied by an explanation and elaboration paper. Again, references are in the video description. To assure its currency and relevance, in 2017, an international group set out to update the original PRISMA statement by incorporating advances in systematic review methodology and terminology that occurred in the last decade. The outcome of this was the PRISMA 2020 statement and checklist. It's referred to as the 2020 statement or checklist as it was developed that year, but it was actually published in March 2021. Okay, so next let's have an actual look at the PRISMA 2020 checklist. Compared to the 2029 statement, or 2009 statement, I should say, the 2020 update included new reporting guidance that reflected advances in the methodology to identify, select, appraise, and synthesize various studies. Since the 2020 checklist replaced the 2009 one, and it's been out of date for a couple of years, I don't see much point in going through what the changes were in these updates or in the update. This information is available though, So for anyone interested in a detailed description of the methods used to update the PRISMA statement, check out the 2020 paper by Matthew Bay, Page and colleagues. These are the folks, are the author group behind the 2020 PRISMA update. So I've included references for all these papers, as I mentioned, in the video description. So let's go through the statement next. So it includes 7 sections with 27 items, some of which include sub-items. Many of the requested detail from the statement, like most scientific papers checklists, is for inclusion in the methods and the results section. For anyone familiar with writing SLRs or meta-analysis, you will know that one of the key things to watch out for is bias. Basically, anything that might skew the results or lead to the wrong conclusions. The PRISMA checklist reflects where this should be accounted for. So there is a separate checklist for abstract development. So let's just have a look at that. So it may be challenging to use the abstract checklist for conference submissions or journals with strict abstract limits. But from my experience, Congress abstract submissions generally do not require strict adherence to equator network checklists such as PRISMA, but you could strive to cover as much items as possible and use it to guide development. Be sure to refer to the checklist to your client during development to clarify the appropriate abstract structure and flow. If you can't include all items in your manuscript abstract due to word count constraints, just note this in the cover letter. You'll have then clarified to the submission editor or equivalent person that you've tried to develop the abstract accordingly. So, in addition to the actual checklist, a flow diagram that describes the results of the search and the selection process from the number of records identified in the search to the number of studies included in the review should also be included. This is checklist item 16A. So templates for the flow diagram are available on the PRISMA website. Again, there's a link for this in the video description. As with most equator checklists, there are extensions to PRISMA for dealing with specific situations. For example, there's the PRISMA SCR for scoping reviews, PRISMA IPD for individual participant data, PRISMA harms, PRISMA for network meta-analysis, etc. So there's many checklists to guide medical writers in developing any of these more nuanced meta-analyses or SLRs. So how to use the PRISMA checklist in clinical practice? Well, as with any other equator checklist, such as consort, for example, PRISMA should serve as the backbone of an SLR, a meta-analysis paper, and it acts as a layout map for outline development. So ensure to cross-check your manuscript content against checklist items. What you can do when kicking off development is refer to papers that have used PRISMA. Cochrane reviews, for example, are a great resource to refer to. So these are all those published by the Cochrane Library. You'll want to check out any publications post 2021 when the most recent PRISMA checklist has been published and applied to these examples. The checklist informs on the right questions to ask if information is missing. So if you're involved in an SLR or meta-analysis paper at the time of its inception, make your client aware of what the checklist requires to be reported. If you're not involved at the time of initiation, make them aware of PRISMA as soon as you do get involved, as SLRs and meta-analysis require certain statistics reported. For example, we mentioned bias or certainty of assessment. You may need to inform the authors that such information is required to ensure the manuscript complies with PRISMA and that these certain analyses are performed if they are missing. So these are some of the considerations for actually using the PRISMA checklist. prior to and when developing such papers. Building from building from this, let's talk about why it really actually matters for medical writers. Well, it aligns your writing with journal and publication standards. It ensures your completeness of reporting, helps anticipate peer review or editor requirement, um, and overall it boosts the credibility of the manuscript and your own credibility as a knowledgeable medical writer. A paper risks rejection or at least being returned by a screening editor if it's not being developed according to the appropriate checklist, such as PRISMA. Um, so when developing one of these papers, you will likely encounter a PRISMA checklist, so do keep it in mind. Um, when submitting at the time of submission, a journal will often require that a completion checklist be uploaded, typically as a supplemental file. There is an MS Word version of the checklist which indicates on which page different checklist items are addressed or reported in the manuscript. But remember, as medical writers, we should be the ones advising the client we work with on the feasibility of getting their paper published. So to this end, at inception, if possible, medical writers should be advising that many journals, especially those that appropriately adhere to ICMJE reporting criteria, require that papers that they publish must adhere to these reporting checklists items. So be sure to refer to that, refer your clients to such journal guidelines at the start. So to conclude, what have we spoke about? Well, we've mentioned that the PRISMA statement, it's an equation network checklist for developing systematic literature reviews and meta-analyses. It is periodically updated. The checklist itself comprises of an actual checklist and a flow diagram which both guide manuscript development, and that we should use the PRISMA checklist to request content from authors to avoid potential issues post-submission. So use a pre-submission. Do not ignore the checklist until the end of the writing process. No matter what type of paper you're working on, there will likely be an equator and network checklist that's associated with it. Always determine and refer to the appropriate checklist when starting a project. I hope you found this video interesting. If you have any comments or would like to hear videos on any other topics, do please leave a message in the comments. Thanks.